Earth Wars, there isn't a TFEW base layout that is 100% impervious. There is always going to be a weakness or vulnerability in any base layout. The longevity of your base depends on several factors. However, even accounting for these factors in your layout, you are still going to have some form of a weakness in your base. It may be more difficult to defeat, but it is defeatable. Hello my Earth Wars friends, I'm your host CF, and this is part 2 of the CFTactics Base Building Guide. In this part we're going to be going over walls and building placement. If you haven't already, please review part 1, Understanding Your Base, linked in the description below. Walls. Walls are your first line of defense on your base. Laying these out and utilizing these walls effectively can make the difference in a successful defense or a devastating loss. Like other buildings on your base, upgrading walls will increase their health, making it more difficult for your enemy's team to pass through them, thus slowing them down. However, that is only one part of the walls. You can also use your walls to guide the enemy team into areas of your base where they'll be vulnerable to attack. This is called controlling the pathing. You'll be able to take into consideration that most bots can walk around wall ends. Yes, this is intentional. As you'll have noted from part 1, the base's build area isn't even. Walls can be configured in several different layouts and configurations. One of the most popular ones, especially early on in your base design, are honeycombs. Some love them, some hate them, and I for one would strongly recommend against the honeycomb design. They use up to 6 parts of walls and are susceptible to gunner and air attacks. While early on in TFEW, honeycombs were highly rated wall layout for your base and could suck up a battle's time, in more recent versions of the game and with the introduction of newer, more powerful bots, honeycombs, in my opinion, have become wasteful and easily targets your base to be taken out. Honeycombs can also be bypassed by squads that have a rushable ability and are susceptible to losing multiple defense buildings against combiners, titans, or even powerful bots. Yes, early on they can slow an opposing team. However, later on down the road, they can be considered a liability. Try to cap off your edges. When it comes to the most susceptible areas of your base's layout, it is usually the edges, meaning the right and left flanks of your base. Understandably, at lower levels of the base development process, you won't have the necessary walls to spread across the width of your base, but as you grow and upgrade, you eventually will get there. Do your best to cap off these edges. Capping off the edges lowers the chance of a rush from either side, but will not prevent bots from casually walking around the end caps. As mentioned in part 1 of the guide, and earlier on in this video, this is intentional. However, you can use your walls, and we'll discuss this later, to guide your opposing teams towards your areas of your base where they can become vulnerable to attack. Take the very basic example shown here where we've capped off the right and left flanks of our base, and in the front of our base added some additional walls to directly opposing team into an area where we'd have some bait buildings and later defenses to start causing this team to accrue damage. This example also blocks off the right and left flanks of the landing pad, so in essence you could influence where the opposition deploys their team. Use your walls as traps. Walls, aside from being used as caps and guides, can also be used as traps. How can walls be used as traps, you ask? Very easily. We'll expand upon the example that we posted. As you can see from the updated example, we've moved some walls in our center core and closed off the area towards the back. We could use this area to the left and right flanks to install some weapons and buildings. We've also created a second enclosure above that where we could house a few outposts if we so choose, as well as a few more weapons buildings to attack the oncoming force. A brief note. The included examples are for illustrative purposes only. They should not be used or recommended as being used for a practical or genuine layout for your base. Granted, in this example, these walls could not hold up against an air attack or even a heavy gunner team. However, the theories do still apply. Understanding pathing. This one goes hand in hand with walls, but is also far more effective with buildings. The opposing team can be attracted to and drawn towards certain buildings of certain types. Take, for example, warriors or some special class bots. They love harvesters. Other bots also love build bots. While other bots, usually equipped with a tactician core, will rush head-on into defensive buildings, these are all examples of pathing. Understanding the various bots' pathing can also help you in both placing your walls as well as your buildings. Obviously, you can't know what bots your opposition is deploying, but you can at least build up some generalities. Use the base trials to try and get an understanding of the bot's pathing and see how they will interact with your base. Placing buildings. We've begun to place buildings to start the base layout process. We've decided to put some build bots up front to help attract and draw in the opposing team. But wait, what's that in the front center? Oh my, that's an autocannon. That autocannon has some range. We've used the info button in the layout editor to see the range of the buildings that we've placed. Some bots that will get deployed up front will immediately begin to be shot at. We've also placed some harvesters up front on either flank to attract those bots to them and hopefully draw them away from that autocannon. There is also a combiner outpost, also known in-game as the combiner beacon. HQ 16 and above can obtain this after finishing the Secrets of Nebula's campaign. This combiner will deploy once the opposing squad is in range. There are also 2 outposts there as well for 4 more autocannons. This is going to be a tough start, assuming, of course, that your opposing team doesn't start off with any special abilities. Please note, we're not going to address building power cores in this video. I have a separate one addressing those. Based upon the example here, there is some strategy involved with the placement of buildings. We've begun by lowering our opposing team into weapons range and hope to immediately cause them to take damage. We've also powered up our combiner outpost, so they're going to have big trouble to contend with, as well as the 2 outposts in triggering range as they move up the base. But are those mines? Yes. The opposing team won't see them, and they'll be stunned for a brief time while being attacked from the combiner. 2 outpost bots and several autocannons, and this is a little bit of a cluster that's going to hurt your opposing team. Again, this is a simple example and uses some understanding of bot pathing and wall layout to direct the bots into this area on purpose. That is the end goal in mind. You want to use your buildings to slow down your opponents as quickly as possible. The area highlighted with the info button in this layout is what many players refer to as a kill zone. Obviously, you want your base to be one huge kill zone. However, given the dynamics of the game, that isn't entirely possible. Now, we've also created a point that the opposing team can exploit, the left and right flank autocannons. They're there by themselves and could be used to pull a team up to bypass the defenses below. Cover your exploits. If you see weakness, chances are so does your opposition, and trust that they will use it. So how could we cover these unintended exploits in our base layout? Well, sticking with the example we've been working with, we've gone ahead and moved some of our buildings. We've moved those pesky autocannons where the outposts were and moved our outposts back into the base. Doesn't this mean that we've weakened our base layout? No, not necessarily. We may have strengthened it by moving those autocannons. There you go, my friends. Base building part 2, walls and building placement. We'll be exploring more in-depth building tactics in the next upcoming part. If you've liked this or any of my videos, please like and subscribe and share. It really does help out. I've been your host CF, and this has been Base Building Guide Part 2. Keep up the heroic nonsense, my friends.